Professional swordmaster, actor, and fight director Braun McAsh spends more time in the library doing research on weapons than he does brawling with ruffians. He not only knows the history of swords, he knows how to choreograph the people who use them on stage and on screen. He is a veritable encyclopedia of arms and armor, and it is my pleasure to welcome Braun McAsh to Studio 4 to tell us more. What does the F stand for? F. Braun McAsh.
Friedrich.
Friedrich.
That's right.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
So, a fight director.
Okay.
What does that mean?
I guess the short story would be that I am hired to arrange to have people beaten up and killed.
Fine.
The reality, yes, the reality of it is that I deal with what we call illusionary violence. In other words, the violence on stage and screen has to look real, but on the other hand, it has to be completely and totally safe, because when you choreograph fights, you have the safety of the actor in your hands.
And you are an actor.
I am an actor. I've been an actor for 35 years. I've also been a professional fight choreographer for 35 years.
So when did you decide to study the art of bladed weapons? And by study, I mean go to the library, know about the history, the types of weapons, all of that. When did it interest you to that degree?
Well, actually, the year before I got into university, I was in the armed forces, and we were doing some knife combat training. And I was also just on my own fiddling around with fencing swords, Olympic-style fencing swords. When I got into theater school, I studied for 4 years as a competitive saber fencer. And then at the same time, there were 2 years of theatrical combat with swords. My coach there was Maestro István Donázsé, who was the ex-Olympic, Hungarian Olympic coach, and also a fight choreographer himself. I didn't really actually start studying the art of choreography until I got into the Stratford Shakespeare Company as an actor.
Right, Stratford in Ontario.
That's correct. And had the great honor of studying for 4 years with Paddy Crean, who was the resident swordmaster there. And in my last year at Stratford, I was given 4 shows to choreograph myself.
Really? So if you're trying to teach William Hutt or somebody of his ilk, gone now.
Yes, unfortunately.
I know. How to fight. Where do you start?
Well, the first thing as a choreographer...
Especially if they're not very good at it.
The first thing as a choreographer is, what is the story of the fight? Because the story of the fight has got to relate to the overall narrative of the script. It has to become a venue for developing further the individual characterization. So what I'm looking at when I'm choreographing a fight is to use the movements of the fight as the equivalent of spoken lines of dialogue. They're an opportunity to reveal different things about the character, like what will the character do or not do depending on the circumstances. And that can tell you an awful lot, especially with fight scenes. In Shakespeare, everybody knows who wins the fight.
Right.
So now you have the problem of how do you make that fight interesting when the audience already knows the outcome. Movies and television, not so much, except, you know, obviously the lead character is not going to get killed. You want to see how close he comes to actually getting killed, even though you know, yes, there's another hour of the movie, he has to prevail, and so on and so forth.
So as a choreographer, what can go wrong? Your worst day?
Well, what can go wrong is pretty much everything, bearing in mind that you are working with essentially real weapons. The weapons are only not real insofar as their edges aren't sharpened and they don't have sharp points. In film and television, for the larger swords anyway, we very often use aluminum blades because, first of all, I've actually shot a fight scene, and nothing but a fight scene, for 12 hours a day for 6 days doing a feature film. So that is a heck of a lot of strain on the actors. And unless you're used to it, your wrists will simply go, your arms will go, your shoulders will go. So using aluminum blades changes the balance of the weapon, but it cuts down their weight by about anywhere from 60 to 75%. Also, there's no reason to use steel blades because, first of all, the noise that real swords make is not this ringing clang that most people get in movies and television. That sound is put in afterwards in what's called Foley recording. So there is no necessity to actually use the sound that swords are making when you're actually filming it. That will be put in
Later.
post-production later.
Is that called looping?
Looping is actually dialogue.
That's dialogue,
Yeah.
but that's not sword sounds.
No, that's Foley.
Okay, excellent. Tell me about these weapons.
Well,
Do you call them weapons? Do you call
oh yes,
them?
they are
weapons.
weapons. That's one of the things you always have to bear in mind. Regardless of whether they're being used for real or for theatrical purposes, they are still weapons and you have to respect them. Mm-hmm. Unlike guns, these actually give you a second chance. So the whole idea is training the actors to control the weapons so that you build the safety features into the actual choreography itself. This one here is a single-handed medieval sword from, say, the period of the late 1100s up till possibly the late 1300s. This is a double-handed sword, sometimes called a long sword, or in German a Langensschwert.
Yes.
Roughly the same period of time. Mm-hmm. The double-handed sword can still be used with one hand. It's balanced very, very well. And one of the big myths about these types of swords, the medieval swords, is their weight. Everybody sort of thinks, oh, they're 10, 15 pounds. No. This sword here is 2.5 pounds. And its balance point is right here at its center of axial rotation.
I see. I'm glad you know that. Now, your assistant was in earlier today, this morning, pretend fighting.
Well, demonstrating a few
moves. Tell me about that. Tell me what she's doing.
Well, basically what
There
we're
she
doing
is
here
with you.
is we are showing you 4 different variations on how a very simple head cut can be dealt with. That is what's known as half swording, which then not only pummels, but uses the tip to slash the throat. The first one was a deflection. This one is an inside deflection with a cut to the side of the head with body displacement. And this last one is opening the door, allowing your opponent to go past, and then cutting to the rear.
I see.
That one simple cut to the head, which in German is known as the Zornhau, the cut of wrath, is the most powerful cut because it starts very high, develops tremendous momentum on the way down, and you can put the entire weight of the body behind it. The myth about medieval weapons is that knights just went out there and hacked and slashed at each other.
Right.
Nothing is further from the truth. These are very complex weapons, easily comparable to the Japanese sword fighting system.
Interesting. So it's a martial art in a sense. It's like move away, go ahead, but know where the weapon is balanced. I mean, you've shot guns.
A martial art simply means a fighting art. We've been inculcated by about 3,000 years of propaganda, as Bruce Lee once put it,
Right.
to associate the term martial art with Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. A martial art is simply a fighting art, and the Western martial arts, which we're trying to reclaim to our culture and our heritage, have every bit as much validity and every bit as much history as the Oriental and the Asian martial arts, because quite frankly, our martial arts date back to Greece.
Really?
Greek and Roman martial arts are the origins of the Western European martial arts. We know exactly how they worked too, because there were 2 Roman historians, Vegetius and Tacitus, who wrote huge treatises on how the Roman army was trained, how gladiators were trained. So all of the research is out there. When I teach historical sword work as workshop seminars and courses, what I teach, I can document almost 100%. So what I'm teaching is a reconstruction of how the original masters taught their students hundreds and hundreds of years ago, because all of the research material by and large is still extant. It's in a lot of different languages, only a few are in English, but generally speaking, access to this material, especially with the internet, is greater now than it ever has been.
That's why you spend so much time in the library or on the internet. So what about this swept hilt rapier? Is that what it's called?
Yes, the 2 rapiers are down here.
Well, we forgot to do these. I don't think we have time.
Well, we can actually get to those later.
Quickly.
But this is a swept hilt rapier. It's called swept because the rings sweep. The rings are there to protect your hand. And this is a flamberge blade, a wave blade. Now, there are some reasons why the blade is made like this. I'm not going to go into them now because a few of them are gruesome. But they're also,
you mean you can gut someone better or what?
Well, yes, and it also has defensive probity as well. But the fact is that these blades are very rare because they're very, very expensive to make, very time-consuming.
It's very beautiful, actually.
Well, this was predominantly a cut and thrust weapon. Now, the problem was when they started evolving more techniques that involved the point, this lets the point through. So they started filling in these guards. And eventually, you get this. which is called the cup hilt. Completely protects the hand from thrusting, because by the time this weapon comes out, the rapier is almost entirely a thrusting weapon. The word rapier actually comes from the Spanish, we think, espada ropera, which means a sword of the robes. The rapier was the very first sword that was designed specifically for civilians. This is not a weapon of war. This was what people wore on the street.
So I could use that weapon if I knew how. I'd have to
Absolutely.
go to your school, obviously, to the school, and we're out of time. Tell me quickly.
This was a mangosh dagger that is used in coordination with the rapier. The whole idea here was you would defend with this to leave your sword free for instant counterattack.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
Braun McAsh, how nice to meet you.
A pleasure.
Thank you. You have to come back because we didn't get through all the stuff.
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.